All right, welcome back to another edition of Baseball for Maniacs. This episode, I will be going through the Phillies' top 10 prospects in their farm system. These aren't my rankings, these are MLB.com's rankings, so no personal bias. I kind of wanted to do this to give people a perspective on the prospects, just in case they're not deep in the game and don't really understand. This is more of an informative episode because me personally, obviously I love baseball, right? But what I really love is the prospects because if you find a guy in your system, right when he gets drafted and you can kind of follow his journey, watch him at Clearwater, watch him at Reading, watch him at Lehigh Valley, and then they get to the team and they succeed. It's just like, it's a fun process, man. You love the journey. So some of my favorites, Scott Kingery, obviously didn't work out. Johan Rojas, Bryson Stott worked out, Alec Boehm to a degree. And it just means more when they come to the team, they're homegrown and they succeed. They really feel like one of your own. Now, like for example, Bo Bichette, right? If he signs with the Phillies, we're gonna love him. But there's just something about these prospects, man. So I'm gonna go through 10 through 6 today and then 5 through 1 tomorrow. So before we get into it, the Phillies right now are the 21st ranked farm system at the end of 2025. 2026 didn't come out. They were ranked 17th before the trade deadline, but obviously when we traded Eduardo Tai and McAble, the system went down. Similar to when Andrew Painter, Justin Crawford, and eventually Adam Miller make their debut, the farm system's going to get worse. But that's the rankings. It's really all about what these players do when they get to the big league levels. All right, let's get into number 10. Right-handed pitcher Matthew Fisher. He was the Phillies' seventh round pick in this previous draft, 2025. He's only 19 years old. So he comes from Indiana. He was obviously drafted out of high school. He actually went to the same high school as Don Mattingly. Nice little correlation there. Fisher was the report they have. He was also a star quarterback. Awesome. Love a multi-sport athlete, on whose projection and athleticism led him to being taken in the seventh round and given a $1.25 million signing bonus. Now, let me kind of get into slot value and how it relates to the MLB draft. It's not like the NBA. It's not like the NFL. You get a certain amount of money you can give to each player, right? And each draft spot has a projected slot value. So, like, the number one pick obviously has the highest slot value. And certain teams, cheap teams, or you kind of want to save some money for the later rounds, they have to get kind of creative. So the Cleveland Guardians took Travis Banzano. I botch names all the time. My apologies. But they picked him number one overall because his slot value was lower, so it gave them more money to use later in the MLB draft, to where you can get players in the seventh, eighth round, and give them more money than that slot value, which can kind of protect you from not losing them to college. Because certain players will get taken at a certain spot later in the draft that they weren't expected to be taken. So then they go to college and they try to boost their draft value in 2, 3 years when they come back in the draft, get more money, right? So Matthew Fisher was a really good arm, but when he fell to the seventh round, the thought was, oh, he's just going to go to college, right? But how the Phillies prevented him from doing that, they gave him a slot value that was 5 times the estimated slot value in that pick. So basically, they overpaid. Now, how they did that was sometimes in the earlier draft, they saved some money that way. We'll get into Dante Nori. He's the number 6 one, but he, I think with his slot value, they saved money in that race, right? So sometimes you don't necessarily pick the best player. You save your money because you think there's a better guy down the line. And that's just the whole intricate details of the draft and everything. It's a really complex thing, but once you kind of understand it, it's kind of a joy to watch. And then what MLB.com does for each prospect, they do it for the Phillies, they do it for every single team. They give a little description, right? To where you can kind of understand more about the player and why he got drafted, what he's good at, what he's bad at. So it's a very informative site for prospects, right? You can learn a little bit. I know I learned some more things when I went through and when I was doing the pre-episode pod. So check that out. But for Matthew Fisher, this is what they said on MLB.com. At his best, Fisher works at 92 to 93 mile per hour, and he can touch 95 with a high spin fastball that features good carry with natural cut. There are times when he'll operate more at 80, 88 to 91, but his heater still plays and should create more consistent velocity as he fills out in his 6'3" frame. Tall guy, right? He was Gatorade's Indiana High School Player of the Year, He also creates high spin rates on his low 80s slider and upper 70 curveball while demonstrating aptitude for a fading mid 80s changeup, right? So he has good stuff, right? He doesn't have elite stuff. He's not Paul Skeens. He's not touching 99. So I'm going to have to watch more film on him because I'm not going to act like I know everything about Matthew Fisher. I'm learning just like you guys. He just got drafted. But right now, and I'm going to do this for each prospect, I'm going to kind of give an outlook on what I think they could be at the big league level if everything goes well. I think Fisher can be a high end number 3 starter or a low end number 2, kind of in that frame. Now, the thing about prospect is we just don't know. Everything's just going to have to play out. But currently, I think with his stuff, he could be a decent middle of the rotation kind of guy. All right. And then his ETA, they always give ETAs on the players. 2029, right? He's 19 years old. We won't be seeing for a while, but I look forward to seeing Matthew Fisher's development with the Philadelphia Phillies organization. Number 9, I think most of you guys will know this, Gabriel Rincones Jr. So he was the Phillies' third round draft pick in 2022. He's currently 24 years old, but he's going to turn 25 in March, so before the start of the season. So it's going to be his age 25 season. The description they gave on him, his metrics are solid with good exit velocities and walk rates, and he rarely chases, giving him a chance to hit at the next level. Isn't that nice? A prospect that doesn't chase. What do you know? Um, they say the key for him will be to find ways to tap into his natural strength without sacrificing any of that hit tool. Because he has raw power, but sometimes you sacrifice batting average for power, whatever. It's just how he's going to translate to the big league level. So let me give you his stats in the 2025 season in AAA. His splits are dramatic. So he batted overall 240 with a 370 OBP and an 800 OPS. He hit 18 homers. But the splits versus lefties, he hit 107 with a 322 OPS in 56 at bats. But versus righties, he hit 261 with an 872 OPS in 356 at bats. So I think Gabriel Rincones Jr. is a platoon player. Like, that's what he will be when he eventually gets to the big league level. He can mash against righties. His defense is good enough. He's not going to be a Gold Glove defender, but I think his big league ceiling is just go out there and mash righties. Now, how I think he can play into the Phillies 2026 season, there's not a spot for him right now because obviously Adolis is in right, Crawford is in center, Marsh is in left with his platoon partner. But if Adolis struggles, I would say up until June, right? Because they're going to give Adolis run April, May. He's going to play every day, right? They signed him for a 1-year, $10 million deal. But if he struggles and Rincones is hitting the cover off the ball against righties in AAA, I think there's a real chance he's the right fielder against right-handed pitching, and Adolis becomes a platoon player. So we're just gonna have to see how that goes out. I'm a big Rincones fan. I think the power's real, man. I think he has a chance to help the big league club, but of course, it's all indicative on how Adolis Garcia plays. All right, number 8 Phillies ranked prospect, Moises Chasse. So he wasn't drafted by the Phillies. He was signed out of Venezuela in 2019 by the Baltimore Orioles, and he's only 22 years old. He was acquired by the Phillies at the 2024 trade deadline, along with Seth Johnson for Gregory Soto. Phillies already won that trade. Seth Gregory Soto, man. We thought when we made the trade for Detroit, he was really going to be a good reliever. 2023 was very iffy. Like, he had a lot of blow up games, but he was a decent reliever. 2024, man, just did not work out. It wasn't a fit. I heard there was a report that he told his agent he wanted out of Philly. Some players just can't handle Philly, and it is what it is. Now, this is the description they gave Moises Chasse, who I think is a pretty familiar Phillies prospect by the general public in the Phillies fan base. With a strong, compact 6'1" frame, Chasse reminds some of a young Christian Javier. Some of you guys might remember Christian Javier. He was one of the pitchers that no-hit us in Game 4 of the 2022 World Series. I apologize for bringing back bad memories. So it says it starts with the invisible fastball that comes from a low release and has a ton of ride up in the zone. It averaged 94.5 in 2024, and he was up to 98, missing a ton of bats along the way. 41% miss rate last year. He backs it up with 3 secondary offerings in his sweeper, a hard cutter, and a changeup that the Phillies think could be above average eventually. There's work to be done on his command. He walked 5.7 per nine heading into 2025, so it was his 2024 season. But his strikeout throwing took a big step forward in 2024, 4.5 BB/9. And the Phillies think he's a chance to be a full-time starter in the big leagues in the future. Now, unfortunately, Moises Chasset underwent Tommy John surgery in May of 2025. So I don't expect anything from him in 2026 because he's going to be rehabbing. He's going to pitch in 2026, but he's not going to be in the big leagues. He's going to be working in AAA, just kind of getting back from TG. Because that first year from Tommy John, it's really just getting back on the mound. We saw what happened with Andrew Painter. Like, his stuff was not good, and that is really the narrative for people coming off TG. It takes a full year to recover and then another year pitching to get back to what you were before eventually. So I think he can affect the 2027 Phils. I'm very curious to see how he does in 2026. I'm not really going to look on his stats too much. I'm going to look at if he stays healthy, similar to Andrew Painter, if he's able to log the innings, and then 2027 is going to be the real determining factor. Now, the thing about Moises Chasset is even if he doesn't perform well as a starter, his stuff is so electric that I think he can be a dominant reliever. So I think have high hopes for Moises Chasset. Of course, you'd rather him be a starter. Starters are much more valuable than relievers, but the way his stuff kind of like fits, it's an easy transition to the bullpen. Because if you have a starter that's like 92, 93, that's kind of where he sits, right? And he struggles as a starter. Yeah, you can move him to the bullpen, but his stuff really, it might tick up a little bit, but he just doesn't have that in him. Moises Chasset was up to 98 miles per hour. That plays in any big league bullpen. So I have a lot of hopes for him. All right, number 7, left-hand pitcher Cade Obermueller. Probably bots that name again. So he was the Phillies' second-round pick in 2025. He is 22 years old. I'll be honest, before this episode, I had no idea who he was, so I'm learning just like you guys. But the description on him was he works with a low arm slot that produces outstanding metrics on his fastball and slider. He sits at 91 to 94 miles per hour and can reach 98 with his heater. Could be a bullpen guy if he struggles as a starter. Showing his ability to create carry, run, or sink at a unusually flat approach angle. I'm learning about these damn descriptions. I have no idea what they're talking about. Like, I know baseball, but I'm not like the nerd. So like, I don't really know what this means. Maybe I got to learn a little bit more. He imparts huge horizontal break as well as good depth on a low 80 slider that eats up lefties and righties. All right. He'll get a chance to prove himself in the rotation in pro ball, though if he immediately struggles, heading to the bullpen could be a viable option for him. So similar as Moises Chasset, he's a lefty. His stuff plays up. They're going to give him a chance to start. And that's kind of the theme for most pitchers taking. No one really is taking as a true reliever unless they're like a college player that they have some experience. The high school guys, they're kind of given a chance to, start, right? Because you want to see if they can do it. Because again, a starter is much more valuable than a reliever. Like a Ryan Kirkring, when they drafted him, they knew that he was going to be a reliever. They had no plans on him starting. But with, what's his first name? Cade, they're going to give him a chance to start. And if he struggles, he could be a dominant left-handed reliever. 98 lefty plays in any big league bullpen. So I really just don't know anything about him yet. So I'm going to have to dive in. And he was drafted this year. So that'll give us some time similar to Matthew Fisher, kind of see what he's all about. And yep, he's ranked 7th in the Phillies farm system. All right. And the last one for today is going to be Dante Nori. He was the first round pick in 2024. Fun fact, Dante Nori's grandfather, Fred, recruited Kyle Schwarber to play for Indiana back in the day. That's a cool little fact. But the description on Dante Nori: despite having impressive all-around tools and very good baseball instincts, some teams weren't in on Nori because he was old for a high schooler. He was almost 20 at draft time. The Phillies weren't afraid taking him in the first round and signing him for below slot with a $2.5 million bonus. He made his pro debut with Clearwater after signing. So similar back on the slot value, the Phillies drafted him, but they knew if they drafted him in the first round, they wouldn't have to pay the premium for a first round pick based on his projections. Gives them a little bit of money to use that later in the draft. Nori entered pro ball with a reputation of having a very well advanced approach from the left side of the plate, and he's done nothing to dampen that evaluation so far. The Phillies thought he could handle a push to the Florida State League, and while it was a small sample, he had competitive at bats right out of the gate and walked in better than 24% of his plate appearances. He has a quick swing geared toward contact, and he is a solid two-strike hitter. The next step for him will be to tap into his power. He has the ability to hit the ball hard, that he has registered 100 miles per hour exit velocities. So basically what Dante Nori is, he's not a power guy. Maybe he can transition into that. He's 21 years old now, so he has time to develop into that. But at his floor, he has a solid approach at the plate. Um, I don't think he's ever going to be like a star, a superstar. But the thing about Dante Nori is his underlying tools are very effective. He's a great base runner. He gets phenomenal reads on balls in the outfield, and he's fast as hell. So he could potentially be a center field option. Let's just say Justin Crawford plays well, he hits well, he stays at the big league level, but it's clear that he's more of a corner outfielder. I can see a case where down the line, Dante Nori is the center fielder, Justin Crawford's the left or right fielder, right? We're just going to have to see. But you got to have players in your system that they don't have like the ceiling of a superstar, but they're a good big league player. I guess my comp for him could be like Steven Kwan, right? I like Steven Kwan. I think he's overhyped. Like there was talks about trading Andrew Painter from at the trade deadline. Absolutely not. But just having a guy in the lineup that works well, like works good at bats, sees pitches, hits the ball hard, not necessarily out of the ballpark, but just is a tough out combined with really good defense. I think Dante Nori could be a good player for the Philadelphia Phillies going forward. So Dante Nori batted .261 with a 733 OPS across 3 levels in 2025. Not great, but the underlying metrics are there, like working good at bats. Maybe he like bulks up a little bit, taps into that power to where he can be like an 800 OPS guy. That's the goal, and play solid defense in center or left field. Now, he did have a good season in the Arizona Fall League. He hit 308 and he had a 386 on base percentage with an 822 OPS. Now, it was only a 12-game sample size, but it shows that maybe with the transition of what he did in 2025 that he tapped into something. I'm very curious to see his 2026 season. And that goes back to this whole episode. Of course, we're going to be watching the Big League Club every single day. That's going to be our main focus. But if you have another avenue to enjoy baseball, go watch Dante Nori. Go watch Aiden Miller in AAA. That's going to be stuff that can lead to the big league team in the future. And then when they eventually do come up and either struggle or play well, it's all part of the process of a Major League Baseball team, which I love and I'm sure you guys love as well. But that's going to do it for this episode. Like I said, tomorrow I'm going to get into the top 5 prospects, and that's going to be fun because the 3 of the top 5 prospects have a real chance to help the Phillies at the big league level in 2026. Aiden Miller, Justin Crawford, Andrew Painter. You guys know the name. I call them the big 3. How they play and how they develop at the big league level is going to be crucial on if the Phillies can continue their window and they can help them win the World Series in 2026. Now, I think Painter and Crawford are going to be more realistic than Aiden Miller, because I think Aiden Miller still needs some time to develop. And then if we get Bo Bichette, it's kind of like a logjam. It's Turner at short, Bo at either second or third, and then Bryson's not filling in either at second or third. So I'm going to get into that on the next episode, but that'll do it for this episode. You guys have a good one.